Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic, let's do it. What's your strange, undiagnosed medical condition that doctors don't have an answer to? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Sleep issues. I've done 3 sleep study tests and 2 tests for narcolepsy, and they can't figure anything out. I'm always tired no matter how much I sleep, and when I have done the overnight tests, I always joke with the techs that I'm going to melt their machines once I hit REM sleep. When I wake up, they say, "You weren't lying. I can tell you dream most of the night." I have 2 lumps on the bottom of my foot. They have been surgically removed twice and still come back. Biopsies were clean. One podiatrist said they were probably impacted sweat glands, but 2 others said probably not. They had reasons I don't recall. Imagine 2 pea-sized rocks permanently embedded on the bottom of your foot. It hurts to walk most of the time. Not me, but my mother. For context, she's always been extremely healthy, exercised every day, no smoking or drinking, just a total health nut. She also one of the kindest and most compassionate people on this planet. My sister and I were 26 and 36 at the time of the incident, and my father is remarried, living far away. 4 years ago, she complained about a pain in her hip. She chalked it up to a pinched nerve. After a few weeks, the pain had gotten worse. It had traveled down the rest of her leg and into her lower back. She described it as feeling like her nerves were on fire. She went to the doctor, who ran a few tests but found nothing. The pain progressed by the day. It was getting so bad you couldn't touch her leg without her screaming in pain. It was getting stiff and more sore by the day. She would have to constantly move her leg around or else it would freeze up and go completely still. She couldn't fall asleep because then she'd have to spend hours painfully nursing the feeling back into it. At this point, she knew something was very wrong. More visits to doctors, more tests, no answers. I could see her health degrading by the day. It spread to her other leg over a matter of weeks. She had to move to a new apartment with an elevator because she couldn't use the stairs at her current apartment anymore. Constant visits to the hospital with a myriad tests only for them to say, "You're healthy, we can't find anything." Walking became extremely hard. We had to get her a walker. Since the hospitals were providing no help, we decided to go to a private clinic that treated people for Lyme disease. Once a week, we would go to this clinic and have her hooked up to an IV with a gelatin treatment. My mother would often cry and sob because she was in so much pain. She couldn't use the bathroom by herself anymore. She could barely support her own body's weight. Chelation did nothing. At this point, she was not able to walk at all anymore. She couldn't cook or clean, use the washroom, check her mail, nothing. We contacted our local in-home care service to get a support worker for her. I was in school full-time and working part-time. My sister was working full-time. We didn't have the resources to give her the care she needed throughout the day. So she was approved to have a caregiver come in twice a day, once in the morning and one at night. The following is one of the most heartbreaking memories I have. I was at her apartment in the early afternoon bringing her food, cleaning, anything else she needed. But I needed to leave to go to school. I left her laying down on the couch with her TV on and a movie playing. She was always so kind and thankful for our help. I told her I had to leave, and she told me, "That's okay, sweetie. Thank you so much for helping me. I'll see you soon." As I'm walking out the door, I look back on her, frail, thin, laying on the couch, unable to move, knowing that no one would be back to help her until late that evening. I felt like someone ripped my heart into a million pieces. I love my mom so much, and she's done so much for me, and I just feel like I was failing her by leaving. I felt so selfish anytime I was not with her, because I knew that if our stations were reversed, she would be with me every second of the day. My sister called me a few days later and said, "I called an ambulance. I'm taking Mom to the hospital. She can't move anymore." That was the last day my mother would ever be home. She was transferred to 2 different hospitals over the course of 6 months. Again, they performed dozens of tests or load her up on medications. Nothing worked, no results. She was given trial medications, and expensive treatments. A full year had passed at that point, and every doctor decided to just give up. They had no idea, and they weren't going to bother to try anything anymore. She was transferred to a nursing home to simply exist. In the nursing home is where she started getting worse. Her legs were numb and paralyzed, but she could still feel her nerves on fire. She had to lay completely flat because if her legs were bent at all, she would be in excruciating pain. She's often described to me as when the blood rushes back into your leg, arm, or wherever, and you get that very painful static feeling, but this was all the time, and her entire lower body. Over the course of 2 years, it spread up her abdomen, her arms, and half of her face. She cannot use her hands anymore. It's been 4 years, and she is still in a nursing home, close to my home, thankfully. But my sister and I visit every few days. Still no answers, no diagnosis, no hope for finding a cure. Throughout this entire journey, she's remained the kindest and most compassionate person. She maintains a highly positive attitude and continues to be a loving and supportive mother to us. I'm sorry for the long read. There's probably so much more I'm forgetting. I love my mother more than anything else in this world, and I would trade everything I have for her to have her health back.
When you were first describing this about your mother, first of all, this was a very emotional story, so thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a good child to your mother. I had a coworker who is a lovely person who a couple years ago was complaining of like hamstring pain and lower back pain, went to PT, or stretching, doing everything. There was no relief. It had gotten worse. And they went to a few doctors, nothing happened. Went to another doctor, they did a different test, and turned out she had stage 3 rectal cancer. It was serious, obviously. But she did recover and is in remission, and I'm actually going to see her in about 10 minutes. So, pain that leads to another diagnosis, always strange, but I hope your mom finds a solution.
I had erectile dysfunction for about 3 years in my 20s. My sex drive was just as high as always, but I could never get it up without taking some Cialis. Not even a lot, like 2.5 milligrams. But if I didn't take it, I just couldn't do anything. I was stumped for a very long time. Checked my T levels, saw a therapist, started working out more, took vitamin D supplements. Nothing seemed to help. Meanwhile, I got to go to the bathroom half an hour before any sexual encounter to take a dick pill. It was messing with me so hard, especially at that early age. 3 years into this whole ordeal, the back acne I have had since my teens really intensified, and I went to a dermatologist. Turns out I have had a raging bacterial infection in my skin the entire time. I had to take antibiotics for 4 months before it cleared up, but much more importantly, within 2 weeks of starting the antibiotics, my dick was working perfectly fine again. Stood up on command, not a problem anymore. Later, I found out that the occasional nosebleeds I experienced were also a result from a long-term bacterial infection in my nose, and got rid of that too. Life has never been so good. Caveat: I did get a diagnosis. I spent about 4 months in my early 20s with excruciating but intermittent joint pain. It was like glass shards grinding between my bones, my knees, ankles, hips, elbows, and lower back. I would wake up in the morning and cry while I was trying to bend my legs enough to step into the shower. I was severely depressed. I went to rheumatologists and they had no answers. My inflammation markers were enough above normal that they believed me, but not scary high. They tested me for Lyme, hepatitis, RA, etc. It turns out I had a bad seal in the trunk of my car, which created a puddle in the hidden area with the spare tire, which grew mold, soaked in bleach, dried on a sunny day, and my symptoms went away slowly over a couple of weeks. Funny thing is that they asked if I was being exposed to mold, but I didn't have any reason to think that I was, which led me to wonder, in retrospect, how many people don't know that is what's causing their problems. I have an itch right in the middle of the bottom of my foot. I've been to doctors and dermatologists, and there's nothing they can find wrong with it. It only really itches at night, but it will get so bad I want to rip through my skin. Best guess is it's something in my nervous system, but that is just because my doc had no other explanation. I kept having recurring stomach pains at random with no recognizable pattern or trigger. First time was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Thought I had just eaten too much and was in mild pain that night. Still felt a little off the next day or so, but went back to normal. Happened a few more times until last summer when I had to go to the ER because it was so bad. Have had CAT scans, drugs, blood work, upper endoscopy, and still no answers. It's like something has lit a fire in my stomach, and also a little like being a balloon about to pop. I never could connect with it a food or ingredient, and it was never regular, sometimes twice or more a month, and sometimes I'd go 6 or more weeks between episodes. The last time was literally the day I found out I was pregnant, and I haven't had an issue since, which is nice. I'm almost afraid to have this kid because I don't want to have the pain start up again. We finally found the solution for my weird medical symptoms. First, I started having migraines 9 years ago, nearly every weekend. Then I started getting bad stomach symptoms in the morning after eating my cereal. Thought maybe intermittent lactose intolerance was a thing. Lived with that for years. Then my dad died and it kicked things up a notch. Couldn't stay hydrated, upset stomach, and diarrhea daily. Terrible canker sores that made my whole face throb. Exhausted all the time. Terrible anxiety. The doctor gave me acid-reducing pills for my stomach, but they were only helping a bit. So I started experimenting with my diet. As it turns out, I'm a celiac. After about 2 weeks without gluten, I started getting better. I remember walking up from a nap one afternoon and not having a headache and thinking, do people normally feel good when they wake up? Felt amazing until I accidentally glutened myself for 3 weeks by not knowing that the chocolate chips at Starbucks actually contained cookie bits. All my symptoms came back, and now I'm working through the 2-week period after going gluten-free before I start feeling better again. After my daughter was born, I had incredible hip pains at the point was walking around with a limp. Had an x-ray of the hips, pelvis, spine, and it showed early arthritis. Yay. I thought I was afflicted like my dad was at a young age. Move on with my limping life and start taking Motrin. Fast forward a couple of years, find a Lyme tick stuck on my leg. Remove it, take it to my trusty doc, and get treated with like a month's worth of Doxy. Hip and pelvic pain resolved. So the treatment for Lyme resolved the joint pain. I was being treated prophylactically because of said Lyme tick, and it turns out I actually had it to begin with. Go figure. I have a rare condition called idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Basically, my body produces too much cerebral spinal fluid and/or doesn't get rid of it fast enough to keep up with the amount it produces, putting pressure on my brain and optic nerves. The funny thing is that it was found on accident. My mom got a better job and I finally had decent vision insurance, so I wanted to have my eyes checked as a preventative measure, even though I've always had good vision and never needed glasses. The poor optometrist was freaking out and told my parents they needed to take me to the ER because my optic nerves were so swollen, which apparently is a sign of a brain tumor. 12 hours later, I was the proud owner of a rare disease. 4 years ago, I lost feeling in my right hand from my wrist to my fingertips. It will lock up in whatever position it likes at the time. Mostly closed in a fist. If not, I have to force it closed, so it's slightly more comfortable. And I lost all strength in the hand and wrist. I have a neurologist who, after doing multiple MRIs of the head, neck, and shoulders to rule out pinched nerves, MS, and the like, and multiple nerve conduction tests, told me he can't help me. I have stumped 4 doctors, including one specialist for something to do with blood, who spent less than my hand was locked and told me there's nothing he can do. Well, after about a month and a half ago, I snapped something in my wrist, and the feeling has come back to the point where my palm is getting ticklish. Always had ticklish palms. We discovered that acupuncture gives me feeling and strength. Also, when it locks, my great boyfriend has a way of massaging my arm from my shoulder blade, to my fingertips to make it unlock. Very little strength, but the movement's back. If I haven't eaten for 5 or more hours, stomach starts getting angry. Once I begin eating, my stomach gets really painful, like I'm hunched over the entire time. No matter how fast or slow I eat, and no matter the types of food I eat. It only subsides once everything finally digests after about an hour after eating. The weird thing is, I can skip breakfast or have breakfast and have a late lunch, but it's only when dinner time comes that my stomach decides to throw a tantrum. The only solution is to eat snacks between, but there are circumstances where I can't. If I ever needed to fast, I guess I'll just die. All of me snaps, repeatedly. It started with my ankle popping endlessly, then my jaw, wrists, knees, and fingers, followed by hips and shoulders. A couple of years ago, I noticed I could pop my shoulder blades against my ribs. A few months ago, my sternum started popping randomly, not something I can repeatedly force. And now my elbows are popping with increasing frequency. Most of it is tendons or ligaments snapping over bones. Pretty sure some of it is just bone-on-bone grinding. And there's no good feeling or relief that goes along with it, like when you crack your back, but it's not painful either. Whatever it is, it's getting worse. And I've yet to encounter a doctor who isn't just like, cool party trick, and immediately moves on. I have a rare condition called selective IgA deficiency. I've gotten sick constantly for 30 years. I'm talking about once a month. And it really ruined my life. The thing is, no doctors even knew to test my immunoglobulins and just kept throwing antibiotics at me or saying it was allergies. When one doctor finally tested me, I realized my IgA level is at 0. Some people live just fine like this, but others constantly get sick like me. Unfortunately, there's no cure for this, unless you lack IgG. Then you can get transfusions, which is still odd to me. Worst thing in the world, it's like I have no immune system. Hard to keep a job, get sick with almost any germs, like I'm the bubble boy. I have had so many weird issues, I'm convinced they're going to name a disease after me. My hands swell up and my palms itch sometimes. Remember those popcorn hands during Halloween? That's how swollen they feel. It has only happened when I'm out shopping and doesn't always happen at the same stores. It happened maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Unexplained horrific vaginal pain. Tested negative for everything under the sun. So many medications and home remedies looking for relief. Final diagnosis was vulvodynia, just to give it a name. The whole reason I made this Reddit account. I finally found an answer to my unexplained collarbone pain. It would swell up and I couldn't bear the feeling of anything touching it. Reactive lymph node. And my shoulder hurts. If I eat too much, too quickly. What the I felt horrible for about a month in 2014. Constant pain that moved around my body. Unbearable fatigue, my joints were incredibly weak and unstable and constantly clunking and sticking. Limbs kept going numb. I was miserable. I went from doing cartwheels in December, from barely being able to stand up in February. I was tested for everything from mono to Lyme to lupus to rheumatoid arthritis and more. At least 20 blood tests. Everything was normal, except my thyroid was a tad low, but that's worsened since, and yet I feel much better than I did then. I was diagnosed with a mild form of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome based on my pain, history of joint dislocation and extreme flexibility. I do think I have that, but what seemed like a frightening decline in my condition righted itself sometime in the summer, and I've never felt like it since. So this was something more. I suspect low vitamin D may have played a role, though. I have a weight in my head. It came down suddenly, like someone dropped a brick directly on top of my brain. It lifted just as suddenly one time in the 9 years since, around 2 years after it started, and within the hour it gradually came back. It may be a coincidence, but since then I have struggled to feel awake. I kept this to myself for years, mostly because of its beginnings. I was still overly suspicious, long into my teens, which I now know could have been driven by undiagnosed OCD, and I'd been practicing this thing where I'd put down a wall in my mind so no one could enter my mind. I could almost feel the physical sensation of the wall coming down, and then one day while I was practicing, something just dropped. It didn't hurt, but it felt like a tangible weight. With one exception that seemed like a fluke, it hasn't lifted since. Strangely enough, since then, I've not been able to put down the wall. I can't feel it. I came forward about it a few years ago and got a CT scan. Nothing showed. I was tentatively diagnosed with sleep apnea for the daytime sleepiness, but out of 4 doctors I went to for help, only one seemed interested in examining both problems. He ordered the scan, I did it, and then it became like a plot hole. No one talked about it ever again. I don't see him anymore. The doctor I see now treats me for sleep apnea and nothing more. I'm about to scream. Stress, junk food, heavy physical exertion, smoke, vitamin supplements and ibuprofen alike, and cool environments can trigger insane rough palpitations and make my left arm and shoulder tense and pop like I might have a heart attack. Ears ring, confusion, went numb, and almost passed out a couple times. My system is just super sensitive to everything for no apparent reason. Just about every single organ has been thoroughly examined and cleared as perfectly healthy at least once. I'm on disability, though. The official diagnosis is panic disorder, because they had to have something on paper, I guess. I don't know. Seems like a cop-out to me, and I've gotten several second, third, and mixed opinions, and been dealing with this for about 5 years. I'm only 23, and 3 cardiologists, and since there's no reason I shouldn't be able to jog 5 miles. Started when I just turned 18 while I was working in the yard super hard one day, and my heart just freaked out and started having these palpitations. But it went on for a full month straight until I got put on a heavy blood pressure medication. It was like all of a sudden I couldn't eat burritos without my system panicking, couldn't smoke, drink, etc. all at once. Everything I used to love started punching me in the face every time I tried to go for it overnight. Hell of a learning curve. With a bit of diet and exercise, I was able to come off the blood pressure meds, but sensitivity never went away, and even as my system has recovered quite a bit, things are still just weird. I have no choice but to live an extremely healthy lifestyle to keep symptoms away.